Hello and welcome to Wednesday's 6 p.m. talk. These talks are meant to share information about mental health in different ways, and obviously we have these, it's an opportunity to talk about what in many ways concerns us all in various aspects. It's our wellness, our mind, our body, and these are talks that I'm doing on a weekly basis to talk about different forms of conditions and mental health issues, as well as talking about solutions and hopes and the way that we can actually support each other to live better and more harmoniously with each other. Sometimes these talks, I do them just by myself on different topics, and sometimes I have special guests with me that always makes it really interesting. So today I have a special guest, a very, very special guest who's going to be joining this conversation, and her name is Deanne Jade Godard, and in a few minutes I will have her join in. So just a few seconds. Deanne, if you cannot hear me, maybe you can try putting on headphones. Okay, great, so you can actually hear me. So today, the June 2nd, is known as World Eating Disorder Action Day. It's an opportunity for professionals all around the world and other people who are concerned about this topic of eating disorders to come together and to share information, to raise awareness, to bring our efforts together for this really special cause that actually affects us all in many respects. We're all affected in one way or another, but there's a subgroup of people who are affected much more, and a lot of people don't know about eating disorders and what they are, and a lot of people might have many misconceptions about it, like thinking, for example, this is a choice, when in fact it's not a choice. There are very important aspects and physiological reasons why a person may develop various aspects of this condition, because there's so many aspects to it. So we'll be exploring this today. And the reason I'm wearing this scarf, which has the purple color, is again to stand together in support of the cause of eating disorders. It's the color that actually was chosen, and as also myself, president of the Middle East Eating Disorder Association, which has been founded since 2009 in the Middle East. Its mission has been to raise awareness on this condition in the best way that we can, offer support, and also to encourage people to do more research. We've been quite active in going into schools to also speak to teachers and also parents, to give them some support and guidance, because there's so little information and a lot of people are so confused, especially in the Middle East. But the Middle East is not the only place. There's many other countries in the world, such as even Indonesia, where I've been living for quite some time. And it's an issue that eating disorders really is affecting people across the globe. So again, this color here is in support of Show Your Purple, is the slogan, is meant to be a support for this special day. So hopefully the talk we'll be having today, and hopefully every other talk, is always interesting and useful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and then I'll make sure to answer them as I go along, myself, or even Deanne Jade Godard, who's going to be with us shortly. And I'm very proud to have her here. She's been my mentor for a very long time, and she has been making a difference in the field of eating disorders to so many people, and has been helping to train professionals in the UK. She's the founder and principal of the National Centre for Eating Disorders in the UK, and professionals from around the world go to see her for her incredible trainings that really allow us to have so much more perspective and the skills, more importantly, practical skills to know the best ways to work with this group of people who are suffering and struggling. So let me just add Deanne. Here we go. So just waiting for you to come online. Hi, fantastic. So it worked.
Very kind, but I think a tremendous amount of credit yourself, because it's one thing to be interested in eating disorders, it's another thing altogether to put yourself out there and work hard as you have done in the Middle East, particularly to found something for people with eating disorders, because in the Middle East, when I was over there with you many years ago, I don't think people even realized there was any such thing as an eating disorder. So you had a doubly difficult job to do, which was to make the public aware that some of their horrible behaviors that were making them feel so bad about themselves actually had a label as an eating disorder, and not just being greedy or weak or pathetic. And you had another job altogether as well, with the counselors and professionals that you were trying to engage with your project, helping them to realize that something they assumed needed to be done in eating disorder treatment were not on their radar. And you a massive job on both of those to bring eating disorder awareness and treatment into the 21st century.
Yes. Yeah. This obviously wouldn't have been possible without a team effort of like-minded people who also felt the same, but didn't necessarily maybe think of how to kind of do something like that. So it quickly resonated with with a few other people at the time, because at the time we were really few, like you said. I mean, it wasn't at all something that was known, you know, at all. So it kind of resonated slowly, and then people started coming, you know, together and saying, okay, I would like to support you with that. And also I understand, you know, I can see the urgency of it as well. And actually those people, not just the very few professionals, but mostly it's been the parents and the families themselves, meaning that they were going through a direct experience of it, that they understood how important it was to make a difference. So yeah.
I found as well that it's like when the it is ready, the students appear. And I think my experience of the Middle East and also the Far East, India and Pakistan as well, where there was no understanding of eating disorders. As soon as someone puts up a little flag on the ground and says, look, there is such a thing as an eating disorder, and it's something that we can help with, then people say, oh yes, good. Now I can put a name going on for my loved ones, or even for me. The other interesting thing is why it resonates, don't you think, is that the therapists themselves, I found that in my work as a trainer, that therapists are this work either probably because they have their own history of struggles with food in some form. And among the people that we train who are health professionals, psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, counselors, about a half of them have their own food, and they use the training in order to heal themselves or to bring themselves into a better relationship with food. And then they kind of are inspired to use their learning and help other people. So there's a little bit of help that's needed for the professionals working in this field, as well as all human beings at the end of the day.
Yes, yes.
But danger would always be in training, thinking that our experience of eating disorder is the same as the clients, and it is not. And part of the training is not putting clients into boxes and saying, well, you have anorexia, or you have bulimia, or you have binge eating, and therefore I'm going to treat like everyone else who's got the same problem. There's a tremendous need for the counselors to set aside their own issues with food, their own history. They've all got a different history and story, and say, let's just not make any assumptions. Let's take every single person and let's try and figure out what is keeping them stuck in this problem, not necessarily us stuck.
Of course, like, as you said, I mean, there's what's interesting is that suddenly the professionals that, in your experience, have come to the trainings who are themselves struggling with some kind of issue with food are perhaps maybe some of the lucky ones, I would say, because they're at least aware that there's something, and then they're maybe going through the training for their own development. But then there's many people who actually who are not aware that there's obviously there's a psychology behind this behavior of theirs.
Yes, I'm always surprised, and I'm sure that you found the same thing from your part of the world, that a counselor, therapist, some highly qualified, will say, I'm quite shocked to have discovered, as I have gone through this painful process of training, I have an eating disorder as well, and I had assumed that I didn't, that it was about other people. And but that's really fine, because the trainings, as you know, that we have together as a collaboration that we've created, they're designed to help people walk through this so that they can be excellent with helping others.
Yes, because it's a process of questioning yourself, right? Questioning yourself, asking well, being like discovering how to question and what to question
Yes,
and what to explore. Right?
what it reminds me of, Jeremy, many years ago, we've both been working in this field for many years. That's actually a shared interest, maybe 20, 25 years ago now, that I was going to conferences and learning from textbooks in the early days, disorder awareness. And one very famous psychologist who was working with eating disorders and writing research papers said to me, well, do you think you need to do any work on yourself of your training other people to work with eating disorders and obesity? Because, by the way, I'm interested in both.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
At the in a moment, because I nasty that people separate eating disorders from obesity, especially professionals working in the field. And I said, yes, of course. I don't think you can work with someone with an eating disorder until you have explored and fully understood your own relationship, so that you dump your assumptions on your or judge them. And to some extent, I have to say, maybe you think it's true, we do as therapists have to walk, we have to do everything in our own lives and our relationship with food. It doesn't mean necessarily being good. It's a very position to be in, but we do have to talk with clients, because if you want to engage with someone with an eating disorder, the evidence shows that you've got to show a robust understanding of all the issues. You've got to kind of instill a confidence that you know what they're going through, understand what's keeping them stuck, and also walking your talk. And I would never ever ask a client to I haven't done myself. So even if, for example, I were to eat more than I think I should, or have a little kind of Rolodex going on in our head about what we should or shouldn't be eating, rather than engage in a lot of catastrophizing, I would do what I teach my people to do. I would immediately calm down. I'd get into a positive mind, wouldn't punish myself, wouldn't come back on my eating. If I had a day where I was feeling fat, I wouldn't start promising to go on a diet. I would know what to do. I would do it. Unless I'm very hungry, and I'm sure you find the same thing, then have the right eating disorder patients at all. And there's an ongoing, as you have found, I'm sure, then working with eating disorders, there's no one therapy. You've got a lot of experience, you've got to accumulate lots and lots of different learnings from physiology, neuroscience, psychology, even some of the old traditions that we're now bringing into this work, mindfulness, self-compassion, as well. Kind of knowing what to do, understanding food, understanding nutrition. I'm really keen that everyone working with eating is not just saying, this is the therapy we'll do. I'm going to do something else, that we can work as holistically as absolutely possible. Because we're not, Jeremy, are we, just taking away symptoms? If someone's bulimic, we're not just taking away the bulimia. That's enough. We want to help people to thrive. We want relationships to be good. We want people to wake up every day feeling, I'm okay. And have a lot of what we call eggs in the basket, so that they're not, we're making, not just taking away their symptoms.
Yeah.
I'll model that with, we'll kind of spread some of the healing that is patients who have a trusted relationship with food.
Yes. And the thing is, talking about our relationship to food, because everybody has a relationship with food, and our relationship with food, a large part of it has to do with how we were, maybe what we were exposed to when we were little. You know, of course, when we're talking about eating disorders, then we might be talking about the genetic component there. Of course, strong genetic links there. But when we're talking about not necessarily eating disorders, but just our relationship with food, there's so much influence from our culture, our background, and perhaps what our parents might have told us. And not only that, perhaps what have told us also about our own bodies, that's going to be affecting us and leading us to have to maybe lead to us to be very concerned about our appearance, maybe, and not being satisfied with our appearance, and always wanting to change our appearance in a way or another.
Yes. Well, personally, I grew up in a culture where food and food rituals around religion were tremendously important. And I also, and I'm smiling, I don't mind sharing with you that I had who was a part of a very large family of girls, actually concerned about their appearance and were terrible weight. So I had a wonderful initial exposure in rules about food and appearance that had a very big effect on me. We actually call this the food script, or that means that we have a lot of attitudes and beliefs that are so wired in to our being. It's very difficult to when we're trying to forge food, and that is okay. Part of what we do, part of what can maintain an eating disorder, and in an Arab culture, so have I. So I know how important food is and eating is, and how much it's the crucible of relationships as well as my own. I think we do, as part of the work we do, we explore Jeremy, we explore attitudes to weight and size and food, and we do so completely non-judgmental, so that someone can actually tell that story. And
Mm.
it's only in the gentle by a therapist who knows what questions to ask that some people can let go of some of the things that may not be helpful. And a funny story that I could tell you about that, my own mum used to only eat a hard-boiled egg and a piece of crisp bread for lunch. Now, when I sit down and I eat a good lunch because I know it's right for me and it's good for me and it's good for my metabolism and it's good for that part of my brain, whether what my weight should be, my ideal or set weight. I can hear my mother on my shoulder saying, "Oh, you're eating far too much. I wouldn't have eaten that."
Mm.
But I smile and say, that was then, this is now, I'm making my own decisions. It still remains a very conscious process, but at least I know it's there because I've talked about it. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh, it makes absolute sense. I think this is such an important part, actually, the fact that how what we say to our kids can have an impact that basically stays there and basically affects the rest of your life and your life, even with food in many respects, and in your body image also with respects to that.
That is part of my remit. It is actually helping people to look at their patterns, not only to help themselves, but to also help their children, because we know that young men and young women are very influenced by comments that are made by their parents, either about weight and size or the weight and size of other people. And the kind of thing that I'm quite tough about is saying, look, please stop asking for reassurance from your children. Do I look fat in this? Do you think I've lost weight? These
Mm.
comments can seep into someone's being, almost like poison, affecting how they will think about their own bodies and how they'll make their own eating decisions in later life.
Mm.
Again, my mother used to comment a lot about my weight, her weight, and
Mm.
I have made a deliberate attempt with my own children, just based on what I've learned.
Yes.
Comments about weight, not to comment about the weight of other people, not to comment about whether someone has gained or lost weight, and to banish the scales from the house. If my
Yes.
mother ever said to me, "Do you think I look fat?" Because our children, our weight is very, very toxic. Now, I would tend to say to them, only because I've learned to do this, what is it you're really worried about? And sit down with them. And usually when they're expressing an anxiety about their body, it usually means they're worried about something else. And that opportunity to talk about what other things they're concerned about just diffuses what they're projecting into their size and shape. I
Mm.
think when it comes to eating concerns now, don't you agree now that it just seems eating disorders and disordered eating used to be niche? And I
Yeah.
think
No, it's
probably
spread. It's spread everywhere.
the biggest mental health issue of our times.
Oh, yes. Which people don't even recognize and realize, really. Just the fact that, how people are exercising, how people are being affected by social media and what they see, and how they think they're supposed to be looking like, whether it's men or women, both. So we're in a culture that basically is very difficult to, I mean, if in your own household, let's say as a parent, you're aware of this and you're not making any comments with respects to the weight of your child, or any comments with respects to how they look and so on, then they will still be exposed by what they're seeing around them. And it might maybe be their friends who are making comments to them about their weight and their shape, and perhaps give them a kind of complex or something to think about. And therefore it's even though they're in a household where such comments are not being made, and in fact they may be taught to accept their body, and that to be told that everybody's different, and maybe we might be giving them all the right information, but this nevertheless they're still kind of exposed to this mass wave.
Because self, as you know, is constructed out of, we have a personal self, a historical self, a relational self, a social self, and a spiritual self. There are many cells that go to make a human being. Cannot help but be very affected by what is in the environment. And I do worry for the generation that's exposed to because we're all capable of brushing off one exposure to something, but when it's continual in a drip feed, then it's very bad. My own granddaughter was fat teased by some. She is so silly that even though she's my wife, there were three of her that would make up a me. But she was fat because fat teasing is now just a way of telling people telling others that they don't like them, and very affected by that, and it took a lot of calming down. We do disorders can be not caused by, but associated with a history of teasing or bullying.
Yes.
And I don't really know what we can do to stop that. But that led me to a question, Jeremy, that I asked a lot recently about, can we protect people from developing disorder? Culture around them is awful. And so, as you know as well as I do, not all programmed to be a size 8. We all
of course not. Of course.
That is right for us, as you know, is to do with our genes.
Yes.
Do with our current diet, and partly to do with the food that's in the culture.
Yes. I mean, the moment, as you were saying, we begin to make comment on somebody else's shape or weight or size, this can turn into some form of what we also call body shaming. And yes, you said it's a form of bullying, even though you might not think it is, but there are so many degrees of it that can also be met like unintentionally, and lead in that direction. So we really have to be careful of the way that we talk to each other and what we give importance to. And I think having discussions like this that we're having right now can raise awareness, so people become more sensitive, to maybe what they say to each other, how they say, information is there's nothing more powerful than knowledge. I think knowledge can allow us to grow if used in the rightful way, and allow us to move in a different direction where we can begin to focus on more important matters and spreading messages of body acceptance. Let's accept our bodies, accept our incredible, unique difference. We each have a completely different genetic makeup. That's incredible. And yet we all come in different shape, weight, and sizes because everybody has a genetic set point. That's just the way and how we're built. That's the incredibleness of how we are.
What you've said is interesting, because I have two hats, and to some extent they conflict. One of my hats and disorders, obviously, and as you may know, I've participated various nice guidances. The other half is that I also specialize in obesity. Now, not the word say these days because we're afraid of weights. And as you know, one of the problems is that if a client comes to see me and says they want to lose weight and I agree with them to help them, it's almost like I'm saying, I agree you shouldn't look the way you do. Like stigma creeps into the counseling space. It's a really difficult one. Because even though I'm with you on body acceptance, I also would have no problem agreeing to help someone who says, I do want to lose weight. I want to lose weight for a reason. It's just called the COM-B model, where they might say, I just want to, not that I want to look better, but wrong with that. I want to be healthy. That's also valid. It's a valid reason. Or even in some cases, I want to be able to go walking in the Himalayas with my friends. But at the moment, I'm just too puffed and I can't do that. And I want to help them, but the right.
Yes, that's a key point, what you just mentioned there. The key point is about helping and assisting, because we're all so different, but assisting each person in their unique situation to have to reach a more optimized self, and then a more optimized, and maybe that means re-looking at what balance means. Balance as in lifestyle balance.
Exactly, and it can be done. It can be. I'm very excited by the new science. There's a lot of news. I couldn't even begin to talk about it here, which shows that we can actually persuade our set weight down. If we just diet, exercise, we can't keep this up for life. You know, people say to me, how do you think about intermittent fasting? How do you think about this diet? How do you think about the low carb diet? How do you think about, and I say, don't do anything you can life because you're not what you said. There are amazing ways to bring your set weight belongs on another talk. Right.
Yes.
Getting to be a size 10. There is a weight that's optimized for each of us. We try to keep, it doesn't have to be big. It can necessarily be the size 8 to which many of us aspire. And wellness and health and well-being have to be very much at the heart of this, and doing something that
of course that's really the key. It is the key. I mean, you know, I think one of the most misleading and most impactful thing that probably is going around and has been going around for a long time has actually been this the diets, the way the diets have taken shape. You know, not in terms of like dieting, but the diet kind of industry and culture that kind of has been giving off information that has hurt actually so many people in finding themselves in yo-yo, not only creating a diet form of mentality, but going from one to another and to another and to another, and finding that at the end of the day they're in a much worse situation than when they started.
Well, I do know that yo-yo diet, we know because they're the same interest in research all the time, non-stop. We do know that yo-yo dieting does make problems a lot worse, and binge eating problems, bulimia. So we know what it can do. And here again, the two have conflict. On the one hand, we both know that diets have a very low long-term success. But that's people who haven't done other work that an eating disorder specialist knows to do. The diet, the sense that if I lose weight, I will like myself so much I'll keep my weight off. It tends not to happen. On the other hand, we don't want to give the message weight loss is not possible.
Yes.
Because it is, Jeremy. I know it
exactly
on changing relationship with food and with health, but leaning theology and neuroscience back up the kind of things I want them to do, that I guide them in. So again, we have to be careful what messages we give. Not to dissuade people, but we can't blame them.
Exactly. We can't blame them, of course.
On an endless quest for something that will help them just to feel better about themselves. But it can be a very painful way to live, to have to wake up every morning and say, how can I control my eating today? How can I diet today? In a restaurant and eat my leaves while my friends all have their whatever. You know, that puts so much stress into people's lives. We can't blame people, can we? From to find something that works this time.
Yes. I mean, there was many, of course, many studies, amongst them a study that was done in which people were put on a diet. And normally you would actually say, like, what they noticed from the result of this diet is that maybe 50% just stopped it after a while and just went back quickly to eating whatever they were eating. And there's a smaller group of people that actually started finding benefits from it. And then they started actually using it and misusing it, and then falling into the sensations of what they were feeling. And then an even smaller group started finding themselves even more captured by the restriction itself. And that little subgroup are people who find themselves struggling with anorexia.
Yeah, either bulimia.
Yes, or bulimia. Yes.
Interestingly enough, and this might be something that's hard for listeners to get minds of, that there are some who become the notion of dieting, that they will overeat to persuade themselves to go back onto another diet. So suddenly, because they find normal eating so difficult to control, that they start over, they have it in their minds, oh my goodness, I'll just feel safe if I can go back onto another diet. And then they'll start overeating unconsciously to motivate themselves back into another diet. And this is very common in the extreme diets, like the intermittent fasting or the low carb diets, or the where liquid diets are associated with horrific diet binging, because people need the comfort and security their chosen diet, and so suddenly they get back on the diet and they don't even know. They don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, of course. That's the impact. It's the impact, the effect that brings them and keeps them in the cycle. This is the diet cycle as well.
Yes. Yeah. So again, if I'm working with people who have been serial or compulsive dieters who've tried one thing or another thing, I would take a long history. As you know, I would get to find out who they are, what's driving, have a particular way, as you know, formulas. I would call it formulating, of piecing together what is keeping stuck in an unhappy relationship with food. Sometimes they think their body is the problem and they've just got to keep fighting all the time.
Mm, mm.
But they don't know that. And
Yes,
it's a nation of low self-worth and
of course.
getting into the eye thinking.
Yeah. A lot of people will find themselves, without realizing it, coping with difficult situations, coping with stress, coping with their emotions through eating or through non-eating. And that's really the issue. When food becomes something else than medicine, or let's say fuel for the body, you know, then meaning that the body needs food. Of course, we're allowed to enjoy our food as well, of course. But the moment it begins to be functional, meaning used to cope with, I'm stressed, or I'm hurt, or I'm afraid, or there's a lot of things happening inside me, then that's when our relationship with food becomes a toxic one.
Well, it's very interesting because I'll go with that to some extent.
Mhm.
I I would totally agree that I found in my work that some eating disordered people actually don't know what they feel.
Mm.
Ask them, what, what feeling? What is the name of the feeling you have now? They can't tell me. And it's true of people who are overweight as well. It's just that when they look inside their body to get a clue to what they're feeling, all they get is, I have a fat, I have a body I don't like. They can't access, rightly say, the eating disorder is the way they get to feel or relaxed. Um, and to prevent eating disorders, there's something I touched on earlier. The home environment is important, but also training young people to give names to their feelings and to look inside their body. We actually know that that is a protection of eating disorders in life. To be very attuned to what you really feel and to be able to express it without parents are going to come down on your head like a ton of bricks and say, don't bother me with that feeling now. So
Yes.
that, well,
Yeah. Yes.
I remember being taught by an eating disorder specialist who said to me, don't look for toads under stones. When you've got an eating problem or a weight problem, don't assume that they've had some adversity in childhood needs to be fixed before you can deal with their eating problem. Some people who turn to food in a big way, believe it or not, they're actually just looking for what we call a dopamine hit. They're not
Mm.
trying to medicate bad feelings, but some
Yeah.
are. Some are responding to stress by overeating. Some
Mm.
are trying to block dangerous feelings or feelings they're not with eating, stuffing food down themselves or starving it away. But
Yes.
people who overeat, and this is why a personal investigation is for a dopamine hit, because when we eat food that's traditional binge food like sugar and fat, biscuits, cakes, whatever, we're stimulating that part of the brain, as you know, the reward brain.
Of course.
And so we're just getting a little insight of
Yes.
that carries us through the day. And the more that brain is, the more responsive it becomes. So we need more and more of the same stuff just to get the same hit. And this is some of the new thinking that eating behavior, starving and stuffing can be about functional or deal with stress or bad feelings.
Mm.
Some people, it's about needing that hit to get through the day. Because,
Mm.
if they're not able, that brain so much with binge eating or starving that
Mm.
they no longer feel any reasonable pleasure or good feelings from the day-to-day experience. could give us joy. And I'm quite interested in the dopamine explanation of what are stuck with needing our food fixes.
Yes. Yes. Yes, of course. And I think that, there was a time when we used to think that a person with eating disorders has gone through a trauma in their life. And if you resolve the trauma, then the eating disorder would be resolved. It's not the case. Of course, there's a chemical, element to what's going on. There's a genetic component, very strong genetic component that's actually going on that will make a person more vulnerable to going down that path at some point in their life. But I think that the good news, if there's a good news, is that recovery from eating disorder, although can be very, very long sometimes, is possible.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you there. What we've talked sounds quite complex. Like, oh my God, what can we do with this?
Yes.
There are complexities to eating disorders when you think of all the things, the components that lead to eating and then keep people stuck or trapped in it. And yet the wonderful news is that if you're trained, you can start a program that will undo some of these elements that are keeping people stuck. And they can and do recover. And by recovery, I mean, I don't mean just not binging or not being bulimic or not being do. It's waking up in the morning and doing your life about food.
Yeah. No more preoccupations around food, and
I
how
mean,
you look.
I wouldn't be doing work. I wouldn't be doing this work if you didn't know how to recover and thrive. That's what keeps us in it. I think anorexia, you said, it can be longer.
Yeah.
Anorexia is a very different kind of an eating disorder. There's quite a lot of people with neuro impairment.
Yes.
Anorexia, we know them. Not in everybody.
Not in everybody, but in some people. And that's why it's so important that, a lot of people will say, oh, why don't they just kind of snap out of it? You can't snap out of it. And a lot of the time it's not a choice. And it's not something that happens only with one gender, but with all gender.
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't discriminate. It concerns and affects everybody, no matter where they are in the world.
Yes. You and I know as well that with all of the eating disorders, including anorexia, that there are quite a few payoffs people get from having a disordered relationship with food, whatever form it takes. There's certain payoffs they're getting from it. They're not conscious. It could just the only way they get to feel safe, or for a bulimic, the only way she can get to eat forbidden foods. For someone with anorexia, it could reducing life to its simplest elements because choice and mess in life just too difficult to cope with, and it has very clear, simple rules. As long as rules, you feel you can cope with all the complexities of life. So we know motivation is a very important part of what's keeping people stuck as well.
Of course, and then for men, the phenomenon of this phenomenon of going to the gym and working out a lot, and then basically not being big enough. It's a form of reverse anorexia, also known as bigorexia. That is also affecting many men and some women as well.
Well, increasing numbers of women getting involved and have exactly the same thoughts. Bigorexia is hidden kind of eating disorder. People get into eating disorders through diet, and then that goes out of control. Men more likely to get into it by feeling dissatisfied about their bodies, their appearance. Men have just different aspirations, body aspirations to women. start off by going to the gym and suddenly become very fixated, as you
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
like but in reverse, because they think the body is the problem, not their
Yeah.
about their body.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
big they get muscle, not big as in fat. There's always someone bigger, and
Yeah.
therefore themselves is not big enough. It's actually frightening, Jeremy, because what then start doing is taking steroids in order, things like insulin, in
Yeah.
order to drive glucose into muscle cells, reduce body fat, or with, I don't know, they do all kinds of terrible things to
Mm.
themselves.
Without knowing. Yeah. Of
It's
course.
fat and burn muscle, and or they know where they are, and they don't want to get better. Just like the anorexic person says, I don't want treatment because of fat. The man,
Yes.
I don't want, and there's nothing wrong with me, just my body isn't big enough.
Mm.
It's flabby. And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
same thing in reverse.
Yeah.
And oh, I don't know about in Indonesia where you are, but
Mm.
uh, among guys, increasingly
Mm.
among, you see people working out. I have studied exercise physiology. I have to. Any eating disorder specialist has to understand exercise physiology, where we talk to people intelligently. And if it is health and well-being that you want, if you want to be a fit 98-year-old with your great grandchildren, you're not going to achieve that going to the gym and becoming the biggest man in the gym, the biggest muscle.
Mm.
You won't.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
do well and to be unpreoccupied, just to exercise, to get some activity 3 or 4 times a week, to get your heart rate a little bit is enough. And people
Yes.
just
Yes.
realize this.
Yeah.
So in this culture now, the information that I have to start off about how much you should exercise, whether you should go to, whether you should sweat on your Peloton, whether you should avoid carbohydrate, like trying to bat off information. It's
Yeah.
all rubbish. So,
Mm. Yeah. Yes, of course. I think what's the key thing here is, of course, we there's so much to talk about in this in with respects to eating disorders, and we can go on for hours and hours. But I think the key element here is that there's so many different varieties of eating disorders. It's quite complex condition. The bottom line is that we really need to be more mindful and with each other, and not to be quick at jumping to conclusions. Eating disorders is complex. It is the deadliest, unfortunately. You know, in severe cases of anorexia, you have 1 in 5 who die. That's a very big number as a result of complications of the condition. Again, it's important to know this. Men, women of all, you know, all genders are affected in many countries of the world.
I
So,
know.
Deanne, it was lovely to have you today. If there's one message that you would like to share, one last message for today with respects to this subject, what would it be?
It would be that with your relationship with food, it's okay to help. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. I like to think of disorder therapy as coaching, not therapy. Good and coach someone into skills that will help them reset food and with themselves. So it doesn't imply there's anything wrong with you. And it can be a process as well, not one where you have to sit and talk forever about whether your mother really loved you or whether it was bad or not. Long message, but
Thank you. Thank you, Deanne. Thank you. It was really lovely to have you today. Usually, just to show you, I mean, usually I have these talks in about 30, like 40 minutes time, just to show how time flew by. Today we're like nearly at an hour, which is wonderful already. All right. So again, what's important for listeners to know that everything that is shared here is our based on not only my own clinical experience over the last 20 years, but also the experience of the personal experience of my guest as well. And it's important that if you're struggling for whatever reason, you can reach out either to myself or even Deanne, Jade at the National Center for Eating Disorders in the UK for any support. That sometimes it's good to see somebody who's in your local area. So everything we talked about doesn't replace treatment or something that you might need personal to yourself. So it's important just to know this. Today was just our own way to talk about an important subject, especially on this particular day. It's just by coincidence that today happens to be on my Wednesday talks, the 2nd of June, which is World Eating Disorder Action Day. And hopefully with this talk is obviously, it's not today's talk and we don't talk about this again, because Action Day for this subject is every day. And we'll be talking again about this topic as we move forward. So Deanne, hopefully we'll have another talk together. I think there's always plenty to talk about, right? Yeah. And all right, so wherever you are, everybody, please take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week for another talk. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye for now. Bye, Deanne. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.